Have you ever wondered what remains of a civilization after 50 million years of silence? We are standing on the precipice of a future Earth, gazing out at an ocean that feels strangely unfamiliar, churning under a bruised and permanent gray sky. The familiar azure blue of our time has been replaced by a murky, leaden hue, a visual testament to the chemical storms that now ravage the surface. It is a lonely world, stripped of the seabirds and whales we once knew. Yet it is teeming with a new, desperate kind of life. The wind here carries a scent not just of salt, but of something ancient and acrid, a chemical ghost from a bygone era. This is the legacy of the Anthropocene, the geological epoch we defined, which has now settled into the very bones of the planet. But look closer at those drifting dark shapes bobbing rhythmically on the rough swells. They look like islands of debris, perhaps the last clumps of our trash refused by the sea. But watch how they move against the current. They are not lifeless refuse. They are the dominant life form of this new, toxic frontier. These massive, floating archipelagos are known as filter rafts, and they are a masterpiece of evolutionary desperation. At first glance, your brain screams that you are looking at a garbage patch, a tangled mat of dark, fibrous material spanning hundreds of meters. But as we drift closer, the horrifying truth reveals itself in the pulsating rhythm of the structure. This is not a collection of dead plastic, but a living, breathing colonial organism that has weaponized our waste. Each raft is formed from millions of individual zooids, creatures that have surrendered their individuality to serve the colossal whole. They have fused together, skin to skin, creating a thick, leather-like hide that is impervious to the caustic surface waters. It is a survival strategy born from the fires of a genetic bottleneck, where only the strange and the cooperative could endure. Is it not terrifying to think that life's answer to our poisoning of the world was to simply absorb it? To understand these monsters, we must look back to their humble ancestors, the simple sea squirts or tunicates of our time. 50 million years ago, these small, filter-feeding tubes clung to rocks, harmlessly sifting plankton from the current. But as the oceans choked on microplastics and chemical sludge, most complex life perished, leaving a vacuum that these resilient simpletons were eager to fill. They broke free from the seafloor, evolving gas-filled bladders to keep them buoyant in the nutrient-rich surface scum. Over eons, they grew larger, clustering together for protection against the ultraviolet radiation stripping through the weakened atmosphere. They are a grim reminder that evolution does not always favor the beautiful or the intelligent, but merely the adaptable. The filter raft is a monument to biological stubbornness, a creature built from the blueprints of the survivors. How many other dormant genes are waiting in the dark, ready to mutate when the world ends? The true horror of the filter raft lies in its diet, a grotesque adaptation that turns our sins into their sustenance. Beneath the leathery surface of the colony, millions of specialized mouths dangle into the water like the roots of a poisonous tree. These tendrils do not just filter organic matter. They have evolved enzymes capable of breaking down long-chain synthetic polymers. They are eating the fossilized remains of our plastic age, digesting the very materials we thought were indestructible. You can see the dark veins pulsing along their flanks, transporting this synthetic energy to the colony's core. It is a slow, cold metabolism, perfectly suited for a world where biological food chains have collapsed into simplicity. Does it not make you shudder to realize that parts of your own life, your bottles, your bags, are now the building blocks of this alien flesh? We fed the future, and this floating nightmare is the result. The ecosystem surrounding these rafts is a study in parasitic opportunism and bleak interdependence. Small, shelled creatures, descendants of barnacles, burrow deep into the raft's flesh, stealing nutrients from its bloodstream. In return, they secrete a hard, calcified mucus that armors the raft against the violent storms that scour the open ocean. It is a symbiotic relationship forged in hell, a cooperation between the eater of plastic and the thief of blood. Nothing here is wasted. Even the dead zooids are recycled by the colony, absorbed back into the collective mass. This efficient recycling is why they dominate the surface. They are self-sustaining cities of meat drifting in a hungry ocean. There is no waste in the future, only fuel for the next cycle of growth. It is a perfect, closed loop of consumption that makes our own economies look primitive by comparison. As we hover above this scene, a profound sense of melancholy begins to settle in, heavier than the humid air. We are witnessing a world that has forgotten us, yet is entirely shaped by our hand. The filter rafts are not just animals. They are living scar tissue over a wound we inflicted on the biosphere. They drift silently, witnessing the passing of eras without a single brain to comprehend the tragedy of their existence. There is a distinct lack of voices here. No cries of gulls, no splashes of dolphins, only the wet slap of water against the raft's rubbery flanks. It is a silence that accuses us, a stillness that asks what other monstrosities we have set in motion. Is this the legacy we wanted to leave behind? A world of silent, digesting mats? The surface has become a graveyard of the familiar, inhabited by the ghosts of our excess. But the surface, with its gray storms and floating monsters, is only the skin of this alien apple. The true mysteries, the things that defy all logic and sanity, are hiding where the light cannot reach. As we prepare to leave the toxic air behind, look down at the edges of the filter raft. Do you see where the dark tendrils fade into the abyss below? There are shapes moving in that deep gloom, shadows that do not belong to the raft. The ocean is miles deep, and the pressure down there creates a barrier that few surface dwellers can cross. What happens when the plastic rain stops and the hunger begins? The filter rafts are merely the gatekeepers, the gargoyles sitting at the entrance to a much darker cathedral. Take a deep breath now, for we are about to plunge beneath the waves and leave the sky behind. As the camera dives, the water turns from a stormy gray to a suffocating, bruised purple. The sounds of the wind are instantly cut off, replaced by the deep, resonant thrum of the ocean's crushing weight. The underbelly of the filter raft looms above us like a storm cloud, its tendrils twitching in the current. But look past it, down into the endless, terrifying blue that stretches into black. The light is fading fast, and the temperature is dropping with every meter we descend. We are entering the mesopelagic zone, the twilight realm where the rules of life are twisted into unrecognizable shapes. Turn on your lights, but be warned. In the deep future, a light in the dark is not a beacon of hope, but a lure. As we descend past 200 meters, the last gray hints of the surface world are finally extinguished. We have entered the mesopelagic, the twilight zone of the future ocean, a realm where the sun has been forgotten and a new kind of star system has taken its place. In this eternal night, darkness is not empty. It is heavy, oppressive, and alive with a million cold, blinking eyes. Bioluminescence here is no longer just a tool for finding a mate. After 50 million years of evolutionary warfare, it has become a weapon of mass deception. The creatures here do not just glow. They lie. Every flash you see in the distance could be a lover's call, a distress signal, or the last thing you ever see before you die. This is a universe of paranoia, where to trust your eyes is to invite your own execution. Navigating this minefield is a creature that has turned invisibility into an art form, the Miramaw angler. It is a phantom, a ghost in the machine of the ecosystem, evolved from the clumsy anglerfish of the past into something far more terrified and terrifying. Its skin is no longer slimy or dark. It has evolved flattened, hexagonal scales that act like organic mirrors, perfectly reflecting the surrounding darkness. In the beam of a searchlight, it would shine like a disco ball, but down here in the ambient gloom, it is effectively a hole in reality. You could be swimming inches from its flank and see nothing but the empty void reflected back at you. It is the ultimate ambush predator, a void that waits with infinite patience. But the Miramaw does not simply hide. It hunts with a level of psychological cruelty that is rare in nature. Unlike its ancestors, who dangled a single lure, this monster has evolved a complex array of glowing filaments that detach from its dorsal spine. These filaments are tethered by thin, invisible threads, floating independently around the predator's head like a cloud of fireflies. By pulsing them in a specific, synchronized rhythm, the angler creates a three-dimensional hologram, a phantom shoal of small, distressed shrimp. To a hungry predator cruising the dark, this looks like an easy meal, a chaotic ball of panic that triggers an instinctual attack response. The angler is not fishing for small fry. It is fishing for the hunters. Imagine you are a mid-sized barracuda descendant, hungry and scanning the dark. You spot the flickering blue lights of the phantom shoal and your instincts take over. You surge forward, jaws ready to snap up the stragglers, your focus entirely locked on the dancing lights. You do not see the massive, silent shadow looming just behind them. You do not notice that the water pressure has subtly shifted as a massive mouth begins to open, not with a snap, but with a slow, hydraulic silence. The Miramar unhinges its jaw, expanding its throat volume by 400% in a fraction of a second. This creates a sudden vacuum, a suction zone that is inescapable. The trap snaps shut. The phantom shoal vanishes as the filaments retract, and the empty water you were swimming through suddenly becomes a prison of needle-like teeth. The horror of the Miramar is that it eats you whole, and it eats you alive. Inside its distended stomach, bioluminescent bacteria line the walls, illuminating your final moments in a soft, sickly green glow. There is no struggle, only the claustrophobic realization that you chased a lie into a grave. This is the reality of the Twilight Zone. Curiosity is a fatal flaw. In a world of illusions, the only safety lies in blindness. The evolutionary genius of the Miramar is a testament to the arms race of the deep. As prey became smarter, predators had to become invisible. As eyes improved, lies became more convincing. This is nature red in tooth and claw, but played out in a theater of shadows and light. The energy required to maintain these lights is immense, yet the angler pays it gladly, for one successful hunt can sustain it for months in the cold lethargy of the deep. It is a gambler, betting its energy reserves on the gullibility of others. And in the desperation of the future ocean, there is always someone desperate enough to take the bait. But the Miramar is not the king of this dark kingdom. It is merely a gatekeeper to something worse. As we watch the faint green glow of digestion fade inside the angler's belly, we notice a change in the water around us. The chaotic flashing of the Twilight Zone is thinning out. The pressure is building to levels that would crush a submarine like a soda can. We are passing the 1,000-meter mark, leaving the realm of deceptive lights for a place of crushing, absolute silence. The creatures here do not have the luxury of energy to waste on lights or chases. They have stripped life down to its barest, most horrific essentials. Prepare yourself, for the chaotic rave of the mesopelagic is about to be replaced by the ossuary of the abyss. As we sink deeper, the water becomes a tomb, cold and still. The angler, with its mirrors and lights, cannot follow us here. It is too fragile for what lies below. We are descending into the bathypelagic zone, the midnight zone, where food is so scarce that evolution has turned creatures into swimming graveyards. Here, in the crushing dark, nothing is wasted, not even the bones of the dead. What kind of nightmare evolves in a world without waste? Let us drift down and find out. If the Twilight Zone was a chaotic rave, the bathypelagic is a tomb sealed in concrete. We have crossed the 1,000-meter threshold into the midnight zone, where the sun is a myth and the pressure is immense enough to pulverize a tank. But the real killer here isn't the dark or the weight. It is the chemistry. At these depths, the ocean becomes acidic enough to dissolve calcium carbonate, the very stuff that bones and shells are made of. Life here is fighting a constant war against dissolution. It is a soft, gelatinous world where having a skeleton is the ultimate luxury, a treasure worth killing for. In this calcified silence, evolution has taken a grotesque turn. If you cannot grow your own bones, you must steal someone else's. Drifting through this black void is a creature that embodies this macabre necessity, the ribcage jelly. At first glance, it looks like a hallucination, a drifting, translucent sack of flesh that seems to have swallowed a graveyard. Embedded within its gelatinous bell are the rib bones of a dozen different fish, curved and yellowing, arranged in a chaotic, spiraling armor. This is not digestion. This is construction. The ribcage jelly does not just eat its prey. It flays them, dissolves their soft tissue, and then surgically integrates their bones into its own body for structural support. It is a jelly that has built itself a skeleton from the stolen parts of its victims. The horror of this creature lies in its transparency. You can see the history of its violence trapped inside its skin. That long, curved spine near the apex? That belonged to a deep-sea eel. Those jagged fin rays protecting its tentacles? Remains of a hatchetfish. It is a swimming ossuary, a collage of death that serves a terrified purpose. Without these stolen reinforcements, the jelly would collapse under the crushing pressure of the deep, dissolved into formless slush. It wears the dead to stay alive, a desperate hermit crab that uses rib cages instead of shells. Is there anything more lonely than a creature that must carry the remains of everything it has ever loved or eaten, just to keep from falling apart? But how does a soft-bodied jelly harvest such hard prizes? The secret lies in its tentacles, which are not designed to sting, but to dissolve. Evolution has gifted this monster with a chemical weapon derived from the ancient Ostax worms, the zombie worms that once bored into whale bones. The jelly's sting releases a specialized acid that melts flesh instantly but leaves mineral structures intact. When it wraps around a victim, it strips them clean in minutes, leaving behind a pristine skeleton that it then absorbs into its mesoglea. It is a precise, chemical butchery that leaves no scrap of meat behind, only the precious, hard calcium that the deep ocean tries so hard to dissolve. In this realm of scarcity, the ribcage jelly has become a hoarder of the highest order. It is not uncommon to see older individuals so encrusted with stolen bones that they can barely swim, drifting like heavy, armored galleons through the dark. These elders are the kings of the abyss, virtually indestructible to other predators who break their teeth on the mosaic of spines and ribs. But this armor comes at a cost. The heavy load demands energy to move, forcing the jelly into a state of near-suspended animation, drifting on slow currents, waiting for weeks or months for a single morsel to swim by. It is a living statue, a monument to patience and theft. The ecosystem around these jellies is equally grim. Tiny, parasitic crustaceans often take up residence inside the jelly's stolen rib cage, treating the bones as a natural reef. They live inside the predator, cleaning the bones of algae and bacteria in exchange for protection. It is a mobile ecosystem, a floating island of bones that supports a whole community of scavengers. But the relationship is tenuous. If the jelly grows too hungry, it will simply absorb its tenants, turning its roommates into its next meal. In the deep, there are no friends, only future calories. As we watch the ribcage jelly drift slowly into the gloom, a subtle shift occurs in the water. The temperature, which has been near freezing for thousands of meters, begins to spike. A faint, sulfurous smell, impossible to smell in a suit, but detectable by sensors, starts to permeate the water. The stillness of the bathypelagic is being disturbed by a distant, rhythmic thrumming, like the beating of a mechanical heart. The water here is not just dark. It is thick with particulate matter, a black smoke that tastes of iron and fire. We are leaving the silent boneyard and approaching the engine room of the planet. Below us, the sea floor finally rises to meet the dark, but it is not the barren mud plain you might expect. Looming out of the darkness are towering spires, chimneys of rock spewing superheated fluid into the freezing ocean. We have reached the abyssal zone, the realm of the hydrothermal vents. But in the future, these vents are not wild oases. They have been colonized, tamed, and weaponized. The silence is gone, replaced by a clicking, grinding cacophony. Something down there is building. Something down there is awake. And it does not welcome visitors. We have arrived at the abyssal zone, 4,000 meters down, but instead of a desolate wasteland, we are greeted by the roar of a planetary engine. The silence of the upper ocean has been shattered by the violence of geology. Here, superheated water, black with dissolved minerals, blasts out of the Earth's crust at temperatures that could melt lead. These are the hydrothermal vents, the original cradles of life, but in this future timeline, they have become fortresses. The chaos of the wild vents has been tamed, organized, and weaponized by a species that has learned the ultimate secret of survival: unity. Forget the lonely monsters we have met so far. Down here, the individual is dead. Only the colony exists, Rising from the seafloor are towering spires of solidified minerals, twisting and branching like Gothic cathedrals made of iron and sulfur. These are not natural formations. They are cities, constructed grain by the iron shell swarms. Imagine a crab, stripped of its solitude and re-engineered by evolution into a eusocial drone, much like a bee or an ant. These crustaceans, no larger than your hand, have exoskeletons infused with iron sulfide precipitating from the vents, giving them shells that are literally made of metal. They do not scuttle aimlessly. They march in perfect, mechanical lockstep, their legs clicking against the rock like the ticking of a million clocks. The swarm does not hunt in the traditional sense. It farms. Look closely at the fur covering their metallic legs and backs. It is a dense garden of filamentous bacteria, a chemosynthetic crop that the crabs cultivate with obsessive care. These bacteria convert the toxic vent fluids into sugar, feeding the crabs directly through their porous shells. In return, the crabs dance in and out of the scalding plumes, regulating the temperature for their microscopic livestock. It is agriculture on an industrial scale, a perfect symbiosis of flesh, metal, and microbe. They are not just animals. They are mobile gardens, tending to themselves in the dark. But do not mistake these farmers for pacifists. The hive mind that governs them is territorially absolute. At the center of each cathedral spire lies a queen, a bloated, immobile matriarch who does nothing but lay eggs and secrete the chemical pheromones that enslave her millions of children. Her chemical commands pulse through the water, directing the workers to build, to farm, and, when necessary, to kill. There is no dissent here, no hesitation. If a worker is damaged, it is cannibalized by its siblings to recycle the iron. Efficiency is the only god they worship. Watch what happens when a stray deep-sea eel drifts too close to the colony's perimeter. The reaction is instantaneous. The rhythmic clicking of the workers stops, replaced by a high-frequency stridulation, a war cry broadcast through the water. From the dark crevices of the spire, the soldier caste emerges. These are monsters of pure aggression, with one claw enlarged into a hydraulic shear capable of snapping bone. They do not attack individually. They surge forward as a liquid wave of metal, overwhelming the intruder with sheer numbers. It is not a fight. It is a disassembly. The violence is clinical and terrifying. Within seconds, the eel is shredded, its flesh stripped for the bacteria, its bones ground down for mortar. The swarm moves with a horrifying fluidity, a single organism made of a million parts. There is no rage in their attack, only the cold calculation of resource management. To the swarm, you are not an enemy. You are just raw material that hasn't been processed yet. This is the nightmare of the industrial deep, a society where life has been reduced to geometry and chemistry, and where mercy is an inefficiency that was bred out millions of years ago. The noise of the colony, the hissing of vents, the clicking of legs, the grinding of mandibles, creates a soundscape of heavy industry. It is a stark contrast to the silent, drifting horror of the ribcage jelly above. Here, life is loud, busy, and relentless. These cities could theoretically expand forever, paving the entire ocean floor in spires of iron and smoke. But they are bound to the heat. They are prisoners of the vents, tethered to the bleeding veins of the earth. Away from the warmth, the cold waits to claim them. As we back away from the heat and the noise, leaving the iron shells to their eternal work, the sea floor suddenly drops away entirely. The spires of the colony become small, glowing specks above us as we drift over the edge of a cliff that defies comprehension. We are falling into a Hadal Trench, a scar in the planet's crust that plunges another 4,000 meters down. The heat is gone. The noise is gone. We are entering the final frontier, the basement of the world. Down there, in the crushing singularity of the trench, something ancient has been waiting. The swarm was loud, but the thing below us has been thinking in the dark for a very long time. We are now falling into the last place on Earth, the Hadal Zone, named for the underworld of Greek mythology. It is a fitting name, for this is less a place and more a state of being. The pressure here, 10,000 meters down, is over 1,000 times that of the surface. the equivalent of 50 jumbo jets stacked on your thumb. Temperature is locked at just above freezing. There are no seasons, no days, and no nights. There is only an eternal, crushing, and silent blackness. Time itself seems to move differently here, stretched thin by the scarcity of energy. Life in the trench does not live from moment to moment. It endures from eon to eon. The defining principle of life in the Hadal Zone is metabolic stasis. To survive where a single meal might be decades apart, you must slow your body down to a near halt. Heartbeats are measured not in minutes, but in hours. Cellular repair happens on a geological timescale. Evolution here has selected for one trait above all others: the ability to do nothing. The creatures here are less animals and more living fossils, monuments to the art of waiting. But what happens to a mind that is forced to wait for 10,000 years in perfect isolation? Does it go mad? Or does it become something else entirely? Anchored to the very bottom of the trench is the answer to that question. It is a creature so vast and ancient that it defies our categories of life. We call it the Abyssal Titan, and it is the final, logical endpoint of deep-sea evolution. It began its journey 50 million years ago as a humble sea cucumber, a simple detritivore sifting through mud. But in the absolute stillness of the trench, it grew. With no predators and no competition, its only constraint was the slow, steady rain of marine snow from the world above. It grew larger and larger still, until it was no longer an animal but a feature of the landscape. It is the size of a subway train, a black, slug-like mass fused to the rock. The Titan is blind, deaf, and completely immobile. It has no need for senses, for it does not hunt. It simply receives. From its colossal body extend thousands of gossamer-thin feeding tentacles, some stretching for kilometers into the surrounding blackness. These are not muscles. They are nets, passive and ethereal, designed to catch the faintest particle of organic matter drifting down from above. A single dead fish from the surface could feed the Titan for a century. It is a creature that has become one with its environment, a living gravity well of hunger. Its existence is a whisper, a slow-motion process of consumption that spans millennia. But here is the truly terrifying thought. The Titan's nervous system, while simple in structure, is vast. It is a distributed network of ganglia that runs the entire length of its kilometer-long body. For tens of thousands of years, this neural net has been processing information, subtle shifts in pressure, the chemical signature of falling debris, the faint vibrations of tectonic plates. In the utter sensory deprivation of the trench, what does such a nervous system do with itself? Does it dream? Does it think? Has it, over the course of geological time, developed a slow, cold consciousness, a mind as vast and patient as the ocean itself? We can never know for sure, but the possibility is a form of cosmic horror that chills you to the bone. We are floating in the presence of what might be a god. Not a god of thunder and lightning, but a god of silence, gravity, and time. Its thoughts, if it has them, would be incomprehensible to us, as slow and deep as the currents that shape the abyss. It may be aware of our presence, registering our sub's electrical field as a fleeting, insignificant spark in its ancient consciousness. The feeling of being observed by something so old and so alien is more terrifying than any monster. There is nothing more to see here, for the Abyssal Titan is the bottom of the world. It is the final answer to the question of what the future depths hide. It is not an apex predator but an apex state of being. It has transcended the struggle for existence by simply refusing to participate. It is a quiet, thinking mountain of flesh that has been waiting in the dark since long before our species was a flicker in evolution's eye. And it will be here long after our memory has turned to dust and drifted down to feed its ethereal nets. It is time to go. As we ascend, leaving the crushing presence of the Titan behind, a profound sense of scale washes over us. We came down here looking for monsters, for creatures of nightmare and horror. But the ultimate horror is not a thing with claws or teeth. It is the realization of our own cosmic insignificance in the face of deep time and deep life. The ocean does not care about us. It was here before us, and it has already birthed the things that will succeed us. The cycle continues with or without us. Let us return to the surface and never forget what we have seen. As we engage the ballast tanks and begin our long ascent, the crushing weight of the world starts to lift. The abyssal titan, that silent mountain of flesh, fades back into the eternal black below, returning to its 10,000-year vigil. We are leaving the basement of the earth, rising up through the layers of nightmare we have just survived. It feels less like swimming and more like escaping a memory that the planet is trying to forget. The darkness here is thick, but as we climb, the water begins to thin, and the suffocating grip of the trench loosens its hold. We are travelers returning from a future that has not happened yet, but the seeds of it are already sown in the water around us today. Think back to what we have seen. At 4,000 meters, the iron shell swarms are still there, clicking and grinding in their heated cathedrals, farming bacteria on shells made of our industrial runoff. Above them, in the silent bathypelagic, the ribcage jelly drifts like a ghost, wearing the bones of its victims because the ocean has become too acidic to build its own. Higher still, the Miramar angler is flashing its deceptive lights, playing a deadly game of hide and seek in the twilight. And at the surface, the filter rafts are bobbing on the toxic waves, soaking up the chemicals we left behind. It is a vertical column of horror, a layer cake of adaptation built on the ruins of the Holocene. But as we break the surface and see the gray sky once more, we must ask ourselves, are these truly monsters? To us, they are grotesque, twisted parodies of the life we know. But to the future, they are survivors. They are the winners. In a world poisoned by plastic and stripped of calcium, the bone thief is not a villain. It is a genius. In an ocean devoid of light, the liar with the glowing lure is the king. Evolution does not care about beauty, and it certainly does not care about human morality. It cares only about what works. And in the dark, toxic future we are creating, this is what works. The tragedy of this future ocean is not that it is dead, but that it is so terrifyingly alive. It has taken our garbage, our chemicals, and our mistakes, and it has used them to build something new. The filter rafts are made of our bottles. The iron shells are armored in our heavy metals. We may be long gone, extinct and forgotten, but our fingerprint remains on every single one of these creatures. They are our children in the most horrific sense of the word. We are the ghosts haunting their genetics, the invisible architects of their suffering and their strength. So, as you sit here in the safety of the present, look at the ocean next time you stand by the shore. It looks peaceful, doesn't it? But deep down, in the dark where the pressure builds, the potential for these monsters is already waiting. The genes are there. The plastic is there. The acid is rising. The clock is ticking toward the day when the Titan opens its first eye, or the first raft fuses its skin together. The future is not a distant country. It is a wave that is already crashing over us, one slow mutations at a time. Which of these creatures do you think is inevitable? Is it the deceiving lights of the angler, or the hive mind of the iron shells? Or is there something else, something even worse, that we didn't see in the dark today? The ocean is deep, and our imagination is shallow. The truth is likely stranger than anything we can dream of. Evolution has a way of surprising us, usually right before it eats us. We leave you now with the sound of the deep, not silence, but the slow, rhythmic heartbeat of a planet that will outlive us all. The sonar ping slows, fading, fading. The screen goes dark, but the water is still there. It is always there, waiting. Thank you for diving with us. Until next time, keep your eyes on the deep.